Mr. Winkler. So we'll process this session with interviews. Actually, we have prepared several questions and topics for Mr. Winkler. So let's start for the first one. So Mr. Winkler, as the communications director of the International Biathlon Union, do you see the future of winter sports after the pandemic and in terms of communications, media, and new approaches to engage with the audiences?
Thank you very much. I think the pandemic is certainly a challenge for all of us, but it also has created a lot of chances, I would say. And I think in some areas it might have even accelerated changes we are seeing. And I think Mrs. Li Jiao has just mentioned a lot of them and what the sports world has been going through in the last couple of years and how the sport is consumed and all that. And I think a lot of roadblocks might have even been diminished and taken out of the way now with the pandemic. So I think for us at the International Biathlon Union, we saw a big change in how media were able to cover our events. And I would say that some of the consequences of this still remain to be seen. So let's say in the last winter, and our events are all taking place in the winter season from December to March. And I think what we saw were that many media were not allowed to travel any longer. So this means you have less media attending your events. And that might even be something we'll be seeing in the future because, of course, everyone was very dedicated to keep the quality of the coverage high. But even without them being on site, so we will see how producers, for example, on television react to that, and if there might be budget cuts or if media will be allowed back in full scale even after the pandemic. I think one of the changes we'll be seeing is or one of the pushes from the pandemic is that a lot of things will be produced remotely in the future, something that we had to switch to, or many media had to switch to in the pandemic. I guess this is something that will stay. Also, remote TV production with less people on site. That's also something that's already done by a lot of TV stations here in Europe. Also having a look at the sustainability of TV productions and the impact on the environment. And of course, then for the digital production and everything you produce for your own channels and for your fans, this was the pandemic was a huge push. And saying that, of course, that's the media side, but then for communications as a federation, I think we have seen new heights in our digital figures and the ways we have engaged with our fans. Reach and engagement for our federation has reached a new peak in the pandemic winter, and even after that, we have started to prolong content and reuse live content and competition content for our fans to make sure that they are entertained in the pandemic, and that was certainly something that has changed during the months where especially we were in lockdown here in Europe. But something I'd like to say is that we have also talked to our fans. We are trying to get their feedback, and we have done a fan survey in February 21, so during the World Championships in biathlon. And in this survey, 25% of fans have said that they have become more interested in the sport of biathlon. So we know this pandemic has not really damaged the sport, but it has generated new appetite, and almost none of the fans have lost their interest. And so that is the good news. And I know that's not only for biathlon, but for many sports out there.
Obviously, the pandemic has changed many things everywhere, including the events. Have you changed in last month to prepare for the new season, new media operations and services to engage not only athletes, but also sponsors, media, broadcasters, and like fans, and things that have worked or not worked?
Yeah. Well, I can say that the first season in this pandemic mode was already for us the last winter season. And I can say everything has changed. The whole approach to our event has changed because, of course, when you have to hold an event during a pandemic, it's all about safety first. And we've seen that also in Tokyo in summer, and I guess we'll see it also for the Beijing Olympics in February. So basically what you have to do then is that you can't plan everything as you usually do, but everything you do has to be reinvented, I would almost say, for an event. So we have changed our competition calendar. We decided to travel less. We have very strict COVID rules. So that had a lot of consequences for media operations. We didn't do any press conferences. We didn't allow any direct contact between athletes and media. Even in the mixed zone, there was distancing, and we closed a lot of normal media zones on the field of play for the media attending our events. Sorry, give me a second. We have a fire alarm exercise in the building.
Okay, we have a technical issue, so just wait for a second. He'll be right back.
This could take us a minute. I'm sorry.
Okay. So after this session, we'll also have Q&A from the audiences. If you have any questions to ask about Mr. Winkler or also Mrs. Zhao Li, you can just type it down, text messages to us, and we'll ask for them. Okay, and as for the technical issues are still solving, maybe we'll just move on with some questions for Zhao. Zhao, you still there? We'll welcome back
Hello.
Mr. Winkler
yes,
later.
Here.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hi,
sure.
Zhao. So, if any audience have any question for Zhao, please feel free to text messages to us. And Zhao, how do you think about IVU with probably also using TikTok, or like your suggestions for us, Chinese Taipei Skating Union using TikTok? Do you have any specific suggestions?
Okay, so thanks for asking this. I think let me start off the probably some recommendations, or let's put it, some ideas for Chinese Taipei Skating Union. So as I just shared, I think their content is very important for TikTok, or actually for any digital media platforms. But especially for TikTok, there are some things you need to consider very carefully before you start an account. Then what kind of content you're going to post. Like if it's a very lifestyle focused, or if it's a sport focused, or you want to start a very purely interactive focused, I think asking this question to before start the account. Once you decided which one will be your main focus of the content, then who are you going to use to help to create the content? Like there are some special characters or athletes within Chinese Taipei Skating Union or the federation. There are some talents are really good at in front of the camera or media, or he himself have some strong, interesting, like behind the scenes stories. And those would be the kind of talents you would like to define or to have them into your pocket to in terms of create the content. And also another one I think to consider is who are you going to interact together with? There are some brands who also have the accounts on TikTok, and then you can create hashtag or challenges together, or you can interact with the international federations, for example. And I think those are some mindset before you move into the operations. So that's what would be my ideas for having an account for CT SU as a next step.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Zhao. And since Mr. Winkler is back, let's move back to Mr. Winkler.
Yeah, thank you very much. Apologies for that. This was an unplanned fire alarm in the building. So as I said, everything has changed for our events, and of course, then with media being less able to do their job and being around the event, of course, also we as a federation changed a lot of our media services. As I said, we've put more content out than normally for our fans, since we knew that media coverage was less from our events. So we've been very carefully, usually about planning what we put out on which channel at what time. But I would say last season we went a bit overboard in making sure that everyone's served to their needs, maybe a bit more than normal. And also we took over a lot of media services. Yeah, we allowed media, for example, to send us WhatsApp voice messages into the mixed zones, and then we did the interviews for the media. We did digital press conferences to which the media could send their questions, and all these kind of things of media work we took over. So I would say that has worked very well, but I guess with no fans in the stadia, of course, we were lacking atmosphere at the events, and we all hope that they'll be back next winter.
Hope the audiences can come back next winter. And for the next question, does your plan or strategy change depending on the type of events, such as Olympics, such as World Cups, or junior events?
Totally, yes. I think that's resonating very much what Ms. Li Zhao just reiterated again. It's so important that you plan well and think about what the fan wants from the event, but also on the channel that these people are on. And I think in the end, it's all about visibility of your events, right? You want to make your events visible, but often I would say what can help or what can even make it more difficult, of course, is the rights situation. And that's also something we have heard in the presentation before. For some events, you have the media rights, you have sold them to broadcasters. For others, you don't have it. And I would say with these three type of events you've just mentioned, the situation is for each is very different. In the Olympics, our sport has 11 competitions in the next Olympics in February, but we don't have any rights on the footage, on the moving images from these competitions. So of course we are planning a lot around this. Yeah, if you can't show actually what's happening on the field of play, we are looking into very good photographies from the competitions, features which we can use on Instagram and which are not just sports photography, but really go into the depth of showing what's actually happening and what's the secrets behind the sports. We are doing a lot of behind the scenes material. We're preparing best-ofs around the Olympics to make sure that we can serve our fans on our channels when they are not seeing what they usually see on our channels, which is a lot of competition footage. So we have also learned something very interesting from our fan survey, and that is that 25% of our really super fans, they saw the sport for the first time in the Olympics. And that means the Olympics are a huge chance for our sport to generate new audiences. Yeah, that's the touch point for people who have not heard about our sport, but will see it on TV just because it's on during the Olympics. And we are preparing a lot of content for those people, which means we have to explain to them what the sport is about, what the secret behind it is, who the superstars are, and why it makes sense to come back for a regular World Cup event and watch it there. And during the World Cup event, we have sold the media rights to Eurovision, our media partners. So this means we have free-to-air coverage across the whole of Europe, and that has made our sport really successful. So what I, with my digital team, what we focus on for our normal regular World Cup events is a lot of behind-the-scenes coverage, features about the athletes, because they are the heroes that fans are interested in, bringing a personal side of the athletes to our fans, and of course, maximizing the footage, the live footage we can use, and then put it out as near to live clips around the competitions. And for the junior events, it's all about making it visible at all. We have all the rights, and we can be a bit more creative here, and we are trying to make sure our fans know that junior events exist and they get interested in that.
Thank you. And we also have heard that IBU is changing a bit the model of their media and content operations, shifting to a more digital and social model. So with no spectators allowed in most of the events, how do you think the fan experience has changed? And what are you going to thinking of bringing to fans worldwide?
I think that fans are not allowed into the stadia for a longer time now. That's one challenge. But we all hope that will be solved and we can get back to normal at some point. But I think the big challenge for sports like ours, and I guess maybe even also for figure skating or skating, is the changing consumption patterns of the younger fan generation. You know, Ms. Li Chao has shown it in her presentation. It has all changed from long live coverage to really short, snackable clips on social media, and that is the challenge. How, as a sport, how do you stay relevant with this new consumption patterns? How do you create revenue streams from that in the future? And how do you make sure that even in the future, these new fans fill your stadia? And I think that is why we as a federation, we have undergone a thorough strategy process. We have created a digital strategy and now worked on the implementation of that strategy. And what is clear is that everything's going to be digital in the future. And you have to be ready that in a couple of years, when you sell media rights, that you can create revenues from your digital channels. And that's the key challenge we are facing in the next couple of years. I have to say, biathlon is a sport. Our main audience is a bit older. We have a bit of these traditional consumption patterns via TV, which we need to keep also to make these fans happy. And it's a very passionate crowd about our sport. But then the question is, how do you raise a new generation of fans, and that how do you do that on your own channels? So we will launch for the first time ever an official IBU app in November, in which we try to educate our fans about the sports and especially bring them a great live experience. So this app can be used as a first and second screen, and the live features are clearly what we want to give our fans so that they can consume our sports anytime, anywhere. And what we again learned from our fans, we have integrated them in the development of these new products, is what they tell us is get the simple things right. Yeah, they want to know what their athletes are doing. They want to know the competition results and the standings of the cups, and that's what they are mainly interested in. The competition calendar, when is the next competition happening, and so that is key to them, and that is what we are focusing on.
You mentioned that IBU has a relative old spectators, yet you're also creating new and younger fans, right? So how do you think so far has changed the fan of biathlon? And are you changing to adapt to the demands of the new or younger fans?
Yeah, I would say that is the main goal. I think, of course, with society as a whole, these consumption patterns change, and so we as a federation have to react to this. But for us, really, the challenge is to meet the needs of the younger fans and this new generation of fans, and make sure that they grow into these older fans, which then have more time to consume live sports, which have the time to come to the events. But you have to educate them and get them interested in that. So I would say that it's a bit of a divide we have to manage here with the older fans and younger fans. But in the end, what you want to do for every fan segment, being younger, being older, being casual fans or super fans, is you want to improve the fan experience for them. And I think the digital platforms, they provide a great chance for that. And I'm convinced that also, let's say, older fans will use a very good event app, which we are also creating, to make sure that this whole fan journey, from getting interested into an event, booking a ticket, traveling there, getting recommendations where to have your lunches and dinner, entertainment program around events. I think if you all bundle that in one place, for example, that's for sure a great fan experience that every fan segment will appreciate, no matter how dedicated they are to the sport and which age they are.
So how will you describe that will be the new digital journey for fans and biathlon? Will they be more connected to athletes and connected to events?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the two main goals that you have to reach. That your fans get connected to their heroes, to the athletes, and to the competitions. Because that's no matter what we as federations do and how important we think we are. That is why people are interested in the sport. It's to follow these heroes and to also have this thrill from live event competitions. So I think that is the key for any federation is to bring your fans close to the life and to their heroes.
And as a manager of an international federation, what tools do you consider will be your best ones when it comes to showcasing your sport and engaging with sponsors, fans, and athletes? Will it be TikTok, just like Ms. Chichal said?
Yeah, that's a very good question. As I said, I think it's all about the visibility of your sport and the engagement, and then I think you need to thoroughly analyze what's best for your sport. I wouldn't say that you can say this like in a one size fits all model, because for our sport we have grown big with free to air television coverage in Europe. We have countries like Norway where 80% of people watch biathlon when it's on. 80% of the population. So this is how the sport has grown big, and now we are changing and trying to find out how we use the digital channels for this. But I would say that in the end, the question also is how you want to use this as a federation and what your goals are. Because yes, I think TikTok, for example, or Instagram, that's great channels to promote the sport and to have touch points with millions of people outside. But then the question is, how is that integrated into your marketing strategy, for example? And what's your content strategy? Is it outbound or inbound? Do you want to bring people to your platforms in the end, where you have full control over the content and the platform and the mechanisms behind it? And then do you want to market that, or do you rather want to make sure you have the widest reach possible with an outbound content strategy for channels you don't really own? So I think here every generation has to do a lot of analysis and really finding out what works best for their audience and for the audience they want to reach, and then need to define what the best channel is. I can say with TikTok, that's still a challenge for us. We've launched an account there, but just really like a soft launch to test and find out what works. We are a bit more of a stamina sports, where it's a very, very much similar pictures you see in every competition. And so far, we have struggled to really, I would say, to create the TikTok relevant content from our sports. But we are on it, and we are facing this challenge at the moment. Yeah.
And to sum up, what do you consider a digital social strategy brings to an organization like yours, like IBU?
Well, I would say, to generalize this a bit, digital and social strategy brings three benefits. I would say it gives you a vision and a direction. Yes. So first of all, I mean, any strategy does that. It tells you where you want to be and why you want to be there in the future, and how you get there, and what measures you have to take to make sure you reach your goal. So that's generally the first benefit of a good strategy, but that's true for any strategy. But then I think especially with digital and social, it's about this modernization of your federation and also this push for change. So I think making sure you have a good digital strategy in place also makes sure that you think about how you connect with your customer and your fan in the future. And that triggers the third big benefit, is that when you're clear where you want to go, you also need to make sure you get the resources and the investment from your board and from the politicians and businessmen who are in charge of the federation. And once you have done that, I think it also gives you a clear plan about how you want to create revenue from these digital and social channels. And I think that's the third benefit from having a clear strategy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Winkler. And this is all of our questions. And now feel free for the spectators, for the fans, to have any questions. You can just text it to us, and we'll let Mr. Winkler to know. Is there any questions for the fans, for the audience? Okay, here's the first one. how do you see smaller markets or national federations engaging and helping the international federation to grow the sport? This is a question from the audience.
Yes, that's actually a very good question. As an international federation, I think it's our let's say goal, but also task to help the national federations grow. So what we want to do is to inspire them with our action. But now when it comes to digital, what can we do, for example, for smaller markets? But so I think what an international federation can do for a national federation who might struggle to be visible on the market is just to be this bigger funnel, to make sure that the interest overall is growing, and then be able to direct people to national federations channels if once they have become more interested in the sport. But for that, of course, the national federations channels also need to be like really well run, up to date, very modern, and they need to know what they are doing. And here again, as a national federation, we are trying to help in the future a lot with content creation, which we exchange with our national federations. So we will produce content which any of our national federations are able to use. We will have very strong reserved rights from our TV contract. So this means also our national federations can use competition footage on their social media channels close to the competitions, which are then again tailored to the national market. So this means it highlights the performance of the national athletes. And here I think that's so important of what Mrs. Lee Trau said before. You need to make sure that it's relevant for the fans, what you show on these channels. So it doesn't mean that whatever we do in the international federation fits national audiences, but we can make sure that national federations have the tools and the systems in place to cater to their audience.
Okay, and for the next question, do you make use of community radio stations to promote your sport apart from the digital tools?
No, we don't. Not as the federation, but our media rights agreement, which we have with Eurovision, that also includes radio, and we have a lot of radio stations at our events, from the big national stations like in Germany to then, of course, also local radio stations from mostly where our events take place.
Okay. So that's all for the Q&A session. So thank you again, Mr. Winkler.
Thank you very much for having me.
Very happy to having you. And it's about the time to wrap up. So have a nice day. Thank you.